Phillips, since 1974, has been chairman of the Conservative Caucus, a nonpartisan nationwide grassroots public policy advocacy group. He's also the president of the Conservative Caucus Research, Analysis, and Education Foundation and the U.S. Taxpayers Institute, and is chairman of the U.S. Taxpayers Alliance. Ever since the inception of the Security and Prosperity Partnership Agreement, also known as the Nord-Américain Union, Phillips has been informing Americans of the loss of sovereignty and individual freedom that will take place if this union is allowed to happen. And we're not going to let it happen. He works tirelessly to inform the people of Congressman Good's resolution HCR 40 to stop the North American Union and the NAFTA superhighway. Please, with a warm, loud revolution, welcome to Howard Phillips.
Thank you very much. How many of you watched the John Adams series on HBO? It was pretty good. Now, as you know from watching that series, there was a period when Adams and Thomas Jefferson were rivals and had very strong disagreements. But through Benjamin Rush, they renewed their former pre-Constitution friendship, and they had a wonderful correspondence. There's a great book that includes the correspondence between Adams and Jefferson. And some years ago I read that book, and one phrase from Jefferson in a letter just leaped out at me and described so much of what we're facing today. Jefferson said to Adams, "The issue today is the same as it has been throughout history. Shall man be allowed to govern himself, or shall he be ruled by a small elite?" That's what Jefferson had to say. Now, one man whose name must be uttered today, whose name must not be forgotten, is the name of Kent Snyder. Kent died within the last 2 weeks of pneumonia at the age of 49. No doubt, in large measure because of his tireless efforts in behalf of Ron Paul. None of us would be here today but for the leadership that Kent Snyder provided. He was the one who persuaded Ron Paul to become a candidate for president. He was active in Ron Paul's campaign in 1988, and I'm proud to say that I supported Ron Paul in 1988. When he was the Libertarian nominee for president against George H.W. Bush. So let us always remember our friend Kent Snyder, and let us always be thankful for the incredible part that he played in arranging for us to be here today through his efforts. Ladies and gentlemen, we all can take a lesson from the people of Ireland, who on June 12 rejected the so-called Lisbon Treaty. You know, there are 27 nations in the European Union. Only one of them had a constitution which required that the people of the country be permitted to vote up or down on the European Union. And the people of Ireland voted down and put a huge roadblock up against those people who have been conspiring for decades to seize power from the people, from their elected representatives, and to place it in the hands of unaccountable bureaucrats in Brussels, Luxembourg, and Strasbourg. When the Maastricht Treaty was being debated a number of years ago, I led a delegation of 40 people to visit each of the countries which were debating the Maastricht Treaty, the ratification of which led to the European Union. And in one of the countries we visited, Luxembourg, the foreign minister of Luxembourg, having no idea who we were, agreed to speak to us. And he said, if the people of Luxembourg had any idea of what we're up to, they would rise up in revolt. Now, tragically, the people of the United States have no idea that our elitist rulers from the New World Order are trying to impose their version of the European Union on the people of the United States. It's called the North American Union. And with the exception of Lou Dobbs and Glenn Beck and some good radio talk show hosts such as those who are here today, the media has blanked this out. To the extent that there have been any words uttered concerning it, they've been bad words. Both McCain and Obama have embraced NAFTA, which is the foundation for the North American Union. There's one presidential candidate from whom you'll be hearing later who alone is speaking out day after day, hour after hour, week after week against the North American Union, and his name is Chuck Baldwin. And I know that this is not a partisan event, but I hope each of you will look at the candidates and come to agree with me that the only candidate who is determined to block the North American Union, to speak out regularly against the North American Union, is my good friend Chuck Baldwin. All of us owe a debt of gratitude to Virgil Goode, the congressman from Virginia, who introduced on January 22nd, 2007, House Concurrent Resolution 40. And I'm going to read it to you because I want you to know what it says, and I want you to work on your members of the House and Senate, urging them to become co-sponsors of House Concurrent Resolution 40. This could be our only chance to vote against the consolidation of power in a tripartite bureaucracy which would have suzerainty over our executive, our legislative, and our judicial branches. This is the most serious threat to confront our country and its status as an independent constitutional republic since the War of Northern Aggression. Here's what Virgil Goode's resolution had to say. Expressing the sense of Congress that the United States should not engage in the construction of a North American free trade agreement superhighway system, or enter into a North American Union with Mexico and Canada. Expressing the sense, whereas the United States Departments of State, Commerce, and Homeland Security participated in the formation of the Security and Prosperity Partnership. By the way, they changed the name to the North American Leaders Summit. I was there in Montebello, Canada, when Bush met with the Canadian Prime Minister and the Mexican President, and I followed him again to New Orleans, where he met with the same people. Next year, they're meeting in Mexico City. This thing is slithering through, and before you know it, unless we take action, unless we demand a vote in Congress, unless we demand statements of commitment by the presidential candidates, we are going to wind up as citizens of a new country called North America, where the dollar, so-called, is really a Federal Reserve note, and it's really not a dollar. It's not what the law of the land stipulates to be a dollar. But even that dollar, so-called, would be replaced by the Amero. The Second Fox latched onto the idea, and let the words spill out during an appearance on the Larry King Show. Well, anyway, on March 23, 2005, representing a trilateral agreement between the U.S., Canada, and Mexico, the SPP was formed, designed, among other things, to facilitate common regulatory schemes between these countries. If they use correct English, you would say among these countries. And there are already some 25 working groups seeking to harmonize the policies of the three countries. And George Bush unashamedly says he seeks economic integration. Maggie Thatcher said one of the biggest mistakes she ever made was agreeing to the steps that led to the European Union. The other huge mistake she made was bringing Robert Mugabe to power in what was formerly Rhodesia against Abel Muzorewa, an anti-communist black leader who had in effect won the election. And she bypassed him and went with Mugabe, that vicious tyrant. But she said the other big mistake she made was going along with the steps that led to the North American Union. You know, recently they celebrated the so-called 50th anniversary, the Economic European Union. A few months ago, they celebrated the so-called 50th anniversary of the European Union. But it didn't exist 50 years ago. What they did was set up the iron and coal community and this and that and the other. And bit by bit, block by block, they produced what is now the European Union. A president of Germany said that 70% of Germany's laws are now made in Brussels, not in Germany. Well, the good resolution says, whereas reports issued by the SPP, Security and Prosperity Partnership, indicate that it has implemented regulatory changes among the three countries that circumvent U.S. trade, transportation, homeland security, and border security functions, and that the SPP will continue to do so in the future. Whereas the actions taken by the SPP to coordinate border security by eliminating obstacles to migration between Mexico and the United States actually makes the U.S.-Mexico border less secure, because Mexico is the primary source country of illegal immigrants into the U.S. In the European Union, you can go among any and all of the 27 countries without a visa, without a passport. And if the North American Union is established, no passports will be required to prevent the people of Canada and Mexico to travel freely throughout the United States. We already have big problems represented by illegal immigration. We have MRSA, a deadly disease which has been brought in by many of these immigrants, tuberculosis, all kinds of diseases, crime waves, etc. And believe me, it'll be much worse if this happens. And Good goes on to say, whereas the superhighway system from the west coast of Mexico through the U.S. and into Canada has been suggested as part of the North American Union to facilitate trade between the SPP countries. This is really a gift to communist China, so that their slave labor goods can come into Mexico through their port Lázaro Cárdenas and then travel up the spine of the United States through a port in Kansas City, paid for by American taxpayers, controlled by Mexico, and up into Canada. This is very, very dangerous. And I could go on at length, but here's the bottom line of the resolution. It's a long resolution. I urge you to get it and read it. Resolved that 1, the U.S. should not engage in the construction of North America's free trade agreement superhighway system. 2, the U.S. should not allow the Security and Prosperity Partnership to implement further regulations that would create a North American Union. 3, the President of the United States should indicate strong opposition to these acts or any other proposals that threaten the sovereignty of the United States. Now, thank God, there are 48 members of the House who have signed on to the Good resolution, House Concurrent Resolution 40. And that list is readily available. Of course, Ron Paul is foremost among them. Please check to see if your representative is among them. If not, do all you can to get your representative on the sign-up list. That's very important. we have started something called the Coalition to Block the North American Union. And we have several dozen organizations and individuals, more than 100 actually, who have joined this coalition. I hope each and every one of you will join it. My associate, Ron Paul, is circulating forms enabling you to sign up. If you don't get a form, put on paper your name and address, and we will add you to our coalition to block the North American Union.
Yay!
A very important thing to do. A very important thing to do. Now, this could all happen very quickly without a vote, and we could be in the same boat as the people of Europe who have surrendered their independence to the New World Order elites. Thank God for the Irish Erringel Brothers for what they did. One of the leaders of the European Union said, "The people have spoken, those rotten bastards, and they're not going to accept the first vote as final. They're going to keep voting and voting and voting until the Irish get it right." But the Irish are more determined than ever to stick to their stand.
Amen!
My friends, there's a lot more I could say, but two things. One, get your member of Congress to co-sponsor House Concurrent Resolution 40, and two, join the coalition to block the North American Union. Let me close, and our website, by the way, we have a War Room website. We also have the Conservative Caucus website, which is conservativeusa.org. I hope you will check it out. Let me close by quoting the words of our first president, who, like Ron Paul, opposed foreign entanglements that compromised the liberty and independence of the United States, George Washington. At a crucial moment during the debate over the Constitution, Washington rose and said to his colleagues, "If, to please the people, we offer what we ourselves disbelieve, how may we then afterward defend our work? Our task is to raise a standard to which the wise and honest may repair, recognizing that the event is in the hands of God." My friends, it's also in your hands to do God's work here on earth as He does in heaven. Thank you very much.